Alright, making a video. Yay. With a cigarette. So it won't be as tight. Yeah. Yes, I'll take time to smoke it actually. Yeah. Anyway, weird video. It should be weird. Strange. A Heroin church. And Vanilla Sky, the movie. So those two things ended up being combined. And then, that affected Mike and DJ. Well, anyway, so yeah, so all these things just at once. It was just kind of funny. I was going to make a video about the horrible movie Vanilla Sky. It was just horrible. I mean, the first 90%. The ending was an adequate a place where the convergence of the whatever philosophical value there was in the movie, it converged a little bit, and they did a little bit of it. Obviously, the conclusion was exactly the opposite from what I would say a rational person would do, but regardless, I'll get to that hopefully. Yeah, maybe, possibly. So anyway, Heroin Church made this movie, a video. Alright, so first, Heroin Church. Yeah, he's a loose cannon. He's this is what he does. He's rude. Yeah, that's it. So nothing you can do about that. And he took an idea of mine, a statement of mine, just accusing love of being a bullshit word, and fundamentally explaining that the biggest part of the bullshit is that cuteness controls our behavior. Something that we should understand to be obnoxiously irrelevant to how something ends up getting treated. This is not a good Olympics. The cuteness Olympics is a bad idea. It has nothing to do with the character of the sentient being being slotted for a fate in life based on something like cuteness. It's like inheritance or anything else. It's just bogus. So that's where Vanilla Sky sort of comes in, because we have this little turd of inheritance who lives this privileged life, squanders his what could be considered his power, his position of power, and fritters it on this hedonistic gratifications with little consequence to external consequence, hurt feelings, destroyed life. So anyway, I thought the movie it was horrible at creating that circumstance. They just create some psychotic woman, and I don't think you need to create a psychotic woman to create pain and suffering. And I think it just would have been better. They should have used a better example of callousness than the example they used, because it was just such an exaggeration. Her reaction was not believable. Yeah, not even close. So, the accident was more a cause of her psychosis than his guilt. I just think they should have made his guilt more obvious to justify his later being incapable of escaping, being haunted by her. The haunting would make more sense if she was a sympathetic rather than malicious character. But anyway, that's besides the point. Getting just to this idea of judgment. So in my statement, look, I've made this argument before. It's like I smoke cigarettes occasionally, but I would never. I've stated I would impose a death penalty. I think it would be wise for society to have a draconian punishment for anybody who gives a child their first cigarette. It's it's a complete waste vice. And that is our passion, is the same kind of thing. It's just an addiction, like all these other addictions, like vegetarianism. He made the argument that he doesn't see the sense in somebody who still eats meat advocating for vegetarianism. Makes perfectly good sense to me that somebody can concede they're weak, they can't do it yet. Whatever their excuse is. Yeah, they make an excuse. That's what people do. They make excuses. It just seems idiotic to say, well, he understands it completely, correctly, that it's wrong, that it's bad, and you're going to criticize him for saying it's wrong and it's bad. Well, of course. That doesn't make any sense to me. Let me see what else. There's other analogies you could use. Say somebody's just made to be a warrior. They can still be against war. Even though they're wearing a uniform, because it's all they know how to do. It's what they're good at. How you doing? Hi.
They're trying to stay away.
Family that walks together, I suppose. Anyway, don't really look like a family though. Anyway, nothing looks the way it should anymore. But anyway, things change. Well, that's the other stupid premise in the movie. 150 years he's supposed to be frozen, and he's just gonna pop back to the real world and fit right in. Yeah, I don't think so. But anyway, I'm sure he doesn't have any money left. It's pretty hard moving from privilege. That trip down to the basement, that's a long trip. It's a tough trip. Anyway, having and losing, might well be worse than never having it all. Open question, but just saying. All right, where were we? So it's, I think it's just incredibly naive of Heroin Church to, he doesn't understand the simple concept that your individual sentience is one individual sentience, and you live in a world with 6,999,999 other sentient beings, and the equation for your logic should not be what's in it for me. What's in for me is childish philosophy. So the real game is what's your effect on others. And so even if we bow to our addictions, which I think is necessary, and I think you're as much a fucking sellout to your addictions as anybody. We can do them in a manner that is actually constructive, or less destructive at minimum. And I think Mike and DJ did a good job of explaining how, regardless of the fact that there might be some element of the cuteness factor bringing them together, that the fact is that they are constructively affecting each other, and that's good. And so they're not, this whole argument that you can, that's I'm just going to call it duplicitous hypocrite, because it's just, Heroin Church is just being so unfair, because he's whined and complained about his entitlement to pleasure, and his inability to play janitor. Well, what's your inability? But your own addiction and bigotry. So it's just such a canard for him to point fingers. Glass house, buddy. So what was the point? So the fundamental point is that your real power as a human being is in your power to affect others. That's the big game. The big game is out here, where all these zillions of people live, and all this zillions of animals live, and all this sentience exists. This is one tiny piece of that big game. And it's just logical to recognize that, yeah, the most productive life I could live is one of complete doormat servitude to that mass that needs comfort. But as a practical matter, again, I'm addicted. I can't get around that. I guess I can get around it, but that's all I can do. I can navigate around it. It still has a gravity. I'm still going to be bound by my physical tolerances, my psychological tolerances. My needs are going to place a demand on how far I can travel down Janitor Road. You can only give up so much of yourself. You can only, shackle yourself. The burden can be too big, and it will crush you. You can try to lift too much. It's that simple. And our psychological vulnerability, as generally speaking, people who recognize life's futility and the sharp, painful blade, the sting of the whip, people who have felt it, these are people usually damaged and scarred. And here you are, have this expectation that they're going to have some superpowers. We don't have people, generally speaking, in this community are not going to be people endowed with superpowers. They're going to be exactly the opposite. People who are struggling just to stay on some plane of reasonableness, some capacity to eat another day, And so, well, anyway, like I said, I really shouldn't argue with heroin churches. It was just, just a resentful, rude, emotional response from him that had just no proportionality. Totally a waste. Not a reasonable statement. And not built out of any disciplined logic. Because again, if you're going to judge relationships, that was not one to judge. Oh, I never really got to the movie. Well, I sort of did, right? It's just a stupid love story in a way. And in that sense, it was just, well, anyway, like I said, I just don't like Tom Cruise. And it just felt like the whole first half of the movie just felt like watching his real life or something. Just had a slimy, oh God, this guy's insufferable. I'd run him over. But it just the plot flaws. Like I said, the exaggerated response from the super hot chick and all that kind of stuff. It just didn't make any sense. So what else do I want to add? Oh, the whole idea of getting cryogenically frozen, and yet your brain still works. That doesn't happen. That you spend 150 years frozen, and you only have one dream. That doesn't work. But anyway, at the end, right, the technical support guy says, hey, we fixed the glitch. It's okay. You're not going to nightmare anymore. And Tom Cruise chooses now to go back to reality as Scarface because he's being promised surgery, right? But that's the joke. Because that won't fix his underlying psychology, right? And you sort of got a taste of that in the first relationship, right? Because the second girl he meets, she can see herself being just the next conquest, just the next thing for him to get bored of. And where in his character has he beaten that, right? Because you got an example of it too, like when he leaves the girl for the first time and he's feeling all, full of himself, like he's going to conquer the world, and 30 seconds of conversation and he's already back to the old lifestyle. So that's how deep his metamorphosis was. And so he has no chance in this. I'm going to go back to the real world and do what? Break some more hearts. He's not going to go back to the real world and become some sort of new person, or be some kind of different person, because it's not in his nature. And again, that's what you're fighting. You're fighting your nature. You're not fighting your character. You're not fighting what you want to be. You're fighting what you're designed to be. And that's really difficult. And so unless you make a real cathartic, it's not even the right word, a hard change, a real big change, which doesn't come along, which isn't easy, almost like changing from being, imagine change, well, lots of things can change. So it's the idea of the person who, like a heroin church, who feels disconnected from their native sexuality. It's like me just trivializing that and say, well, all you need is a few experiences and that'll completely change. And no, it doesn't just completely change easily. It's going to take more than a minor experience. It's going to take a major experience. But it's not even just the experience. It's not something you can learn. It's something you have to be emotionally trained into. You have to learn it through conditioning, through reliving hours of life in your new role. I mean, reconditioning like Clockwork Orange. It's not a simple process of just reprogram. You just put a new card in their brain. Well, maybe it is 150 years from now. But anyway, so I just thought the conclusion was kind of silly. He'll go back to some world where he will not have the promise of his perfect love that he is seeking. Again, make the girl really ugly, and then see how the movie if it makes any sense. Make the second girl really ugly, and then see if you can make any sense out of this movie. No, the sense of it evaporates. So I just want to make that argument to Heroin Church, that as much as I hate the bigotry of my psychology and my nature, I will enjoy aesthetics. I will feel passion. And it's just a fact. Okay, so it has nothing to do with my character. It has everything to do with my nature. So fuck you and your silly expectations that I stop being a man. Anyway, enough. Until next time.